Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome into the show, GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Give us a follow on Twitter at GSMC_soccer. Like us on Facebook, GSMC Soccer. Loads of fun coming your way today. It's a big weekend, was a big week in the world of soccer, especially for those of us in the United States. Major League Soccer opens up this weekend. 13 matches, all 26 teams in action. We've got a lot of MLS stuff to get into on the show today. I'll have my Eastern and Western Conference standing predictions on today's show. We'll also talk about the broader topics about the MLS to kind of lead into the opening weekend. We'll talk about whether expanding as rapidly as they are to the size that they are, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? We'll discuss whether Major League Soccer is one of the major leagues in the world. And there were some comments this week from Major League Soccer presidents that they will catch Major League Baseball. And by 2045, which is a long time, but not that long, 25 years goes quick. It doesn't really go quick, but it feels like it goes quick. I feel like the first 21 years of my life went really quick. But they said that by 2045, Major League Soccer will catch the Premier League. We'll talk about all of that, plus full season preview for Major League Soccer. That is a majority of our show. El Clasico this weekend as well. Real Madrid versus Barcelona. Always a fun match. That's on Sunday. Won't have time to dive into the specifics of that match. But those two teams played this week in the Champions League. Our first segment is going to be breaking down all the results from this past week. Just to run it down for you, Bayern Munich got a 3-0 win in London against Chelsea. Looks like Frank Lampard's squad not ready to handle the might of Bayern Munich, although they picked up a major injury from that game. Robert Lewandowski out for now a month, which could affect Bayern Munich's chances in Germany. They've been 7 consecutive German champions. It might not be 8 for Bayern Munich. Napoli and Barcelona, they drew 1-1. Barcelona and Napoli played really dead even in that match. Man City 2-1 victory against Real Madrid. That was a comeback victory for Pep Guardiola's squad, and it looks like this ban is going to be very likely. Man City most likely won't be participating in the next 2 Champions Leagues, so this is a huge tournament for them, and they pull a little bit of an upset in some people's eyes with the 2-1 victory on the road against Real Madrid. And Juventus could not go to France and even score a goal. Ronaldo's streak of 11 matches consecutive scoring comes to an end as Juventus goes down to Olympique Lyon 1-0, which honestly to me was the most surprising result of the weekend. The fact that Juventus is struggling this much, now there's questions from fans about their manager situation, how all of this is in trouble. It's a horrible time for Juventus. They might not win Italy, and they've won Italy what feels like this entire decade. So real panic there from Juventus. The match, though, that stood out to me was Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich, according to 538, has been one of the favorites in this tournament since the start. They still have not lost in this tournament. They went a perfect 6-for-6 in the group stage. Now a 3-0 win against a solid Chelsea squad, although some injuries to that team probably aren't as good as you hope that they would be, but 3-0 dominance. And Bayern was dominant from start to finish. Because that match, you start watching it, and you keep waiting. Okay, well, when's Chelsea's run? Bayern needs to score because Chelsea, they're going to get on the front foot. They'll get on the front foot here. And they never did. It just was complete dominance front to back. It looked like Bayern playing against a Bundesliga team, which was just awfully surprising to me that Chelsea was never able to bite back in this game. It felt like they weren't cohesive in the way they played, and Bayern Munich just hammered them. And Chelsea will not make it to the quarterfinal round of this tournament. Bayern Munich is the clear favorite in that tie, obviously with a 3-0 win, with or without Robert Lewandowski. Now, will Lewandowski be healthy enough for the quarterfinal portion of this tournament? That is the question. Maybe, although it's about 50-50, and he's crucial, especially if Bayern Munich picks up a really bad draw in round 2. You know, maybe Liverpool sneaks through, even if they saw Dortmund. If they don't have that goal-scoring ability, that distribution ability of one of the best strikers in the world in Robert Lewandowski, they could struggle in the quarterfinal. That's a huge injury. They might struggle in Germany. It's going to be a real test of Hansi Flick, the manager of Bayern Munich. If he keeps them afloat over this 4-week span without Robert Lewandowski, Hansi Flick should be named the manager for Bayern Munich moving forward. They have not made a commitment to him to future years, but if Bayern is able to get results in the Bundesliga, maintain first place, and if Lewandowski is not healthy for the quarterfinal, find a way to advance to the semifinals of the Champions League, Hansi Flick should 1,000% be the manager moving forward for Bayern Munich. Sometimes you just pick a guy, whether it's a big name or not. And Jupp Heynckes is, to me, a Messiah-like figure for Bayern Munich fans because he's the last guy that brought them a Champions League at the beginning of the 2010s. He is the guy that seems to always get it right for Bayern Munich, and he likes Hansi Flick. Therefore, I like Hansi Flick for Bayern Munich moving forward. Man City, Real Madrid. Man City looked like the better team, and Real Madrid feels like they're really missing Cristiano Ronaldo, although Ronaldo wasn't too impressive against Olympique Lyon. But Man City, an advantage now, 2 away goals. They get to go home. Those fans understand it's the last Champions League match, potentially. If they don't get a result, they'll be able to watch at Etihad Stadium. They're going to be on fire, excited. I really think that Man City will advance in this tie now. Barcelona, they get Camp Nou at home. They'll play much better, I think, against Napoli. I think that Napoli's drawing dead in the second leg against Barcelona. And to me, Juventus, I hope they can bounce back. What do I know about Juventus now? After that 1-0 loss to Lyon. What do I know about Juventus? I don't know what's going to happen. It's hard for me to be confident in it. And who would have thought that the quarterfinals of this tournament would only feature one Italian team, and that Italian team would be Atalanta. That's on the table right now. If Cristiano Ronaldo can't figure this thing out, the dream scenario for me, and what I've been talking about on this show time and time again, Barcelona somehow, some way blows it at Camp Nou. Napoli wins 2-0 or something. It's embarrassing. They're out in the round of 16. And then Juventus doesn't score again, this time at home. They're out of the round of 16. Messi and Ronaldo sitting at home on the couch for the quarterfinals of the Champions League, both struggling in league play, hopefully pushing the Messi and Ronaldo combination that's been slothfully floated out there that nobody really believes, that I am shouting from the rooftops would be the best move for these guys' careers. Because if they're both out in the round of 16, they're only getting older, combine, right? Elevate your legacy. Elevate how much you're in the headlines. Can only be a good thing. And you'll win. And you'll win. Like, I think this whole NFL thing, Tom Brady, yeah, you go to New England, whatever. Nobody's really caring. You're going to New England again. Make some headlines. Make a move that people remember. And I think that Messi and Ronaldo playing together would be that type of move. Champions League, so much fun. The next fixtures, I'm clicking through the calendar here. The next fixtures won't be until Tuesday, March 10th. That's the next time we'll get going with the second legs of these things. Leipzig, Tottenham, Valencia, Atalanta. And then on that Wednesday, Liverpool, Atletico, PSG, Dortmund. We take a look at the updated projections from 538. Right now, to win the final, Manchester City has jumped into the favorite. I told you that would happen, that the Man City-Real Madrid odds were both being brought down because they're playing each other in the round of 16, and whoever appears to have the advantage in that tie will jump to the top of this ranking. It's exactly what's happened. Right now, to win the final, it's Manchester City, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Barcelona, Leipzig, PSG, Dortmund, Atalanta, Atletico Madrid, and then down to Juventus. Right now is the order to win this tournament. Bayern Munich, to me, if they can make it through a quarterfinal without Lewandowski, they have a little more experience, and I trust them a little bit more than Manchester City in this type of tournament. Although Man City, big win on the road at the Bernabeu. We'll go ahead and step aside, take a break. That was our Champions League breakdown. We talk the MLS, how I dove into the standings, I dove into the predictions, and it's the most unpredictable sports league I have ever seen or tried to predict. We'll talk about Major League Soccer. Kicks off this weekend on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
GSMC Soccer Podcast. Welcome back into the show. Major League Soccer. Oh, I love this league. I love it because it's ours. I love it because it's America's. I love it because it's cities we're familiar with and history that we can connect to. Because, listen, I love the Premier League. I love the Bundesliga. I'm from Germany. There's connection there. But understanding all those cities that most of us have never been to, all those cultures most of us have never been a part of, can be a little more difficult than here in the United States. It's an American sports league. That is why Major League Soccer, to me, is very attractive. And it's a good league, guys. And what makes a good league? Now, if you're looking at European soccer, well, you need some dominant teams, and those dominant teams bring in a lot of stars, and then you need passionate fan bases in the mid-tier of your league, like the Premier League. And I'm like, yeah, that's what the European soccer model is, but what makes an American sports league popular? An American sports league is popular when cities are connected to their teams, and those cities get to experience championship runs, playoff runs, important games fairly regularly. Every sports league in the United States has parity. Way more parity than is seen in Europe, in the Premier League. Right? I mean, it's parity that Liverpool's about to win the Premier League because Liverpool hasn't done it in 30 years. But Liverpool's always been in the top 5. They've always been one of the best teams. And it's kind of stacked against it. And you've got a few teams, and the Premier League is the biggest league in the world, and a few teams will jump up there and make runs. But it's the same 5 or 6. You know who's good just by the logo. That's not how American sports leagues works. Well, what about the NBA? Golden State Warriors weren't relevant for a very long time before this dynasty. Neither were the Miami Heat. Neither were the Chicago Bulls before Michael Jordan. Now the Lakers and the Celtics, yes, they've been there and been there always. But the Lakers are coming off 5 straight times not being in the playoffs. I mean, that's kind of happening in England with Manchester United, but Manchester United's still near the top of the table. It's not like they've fallen off. The Lakers had some of the worst records in the NBA over a few years. Parity is what makes those sports leagues popular. Major League Baseball, the Royals can be mired in misery and then pop up and appear in the World Series. Mets fans can be down and up and down and up. The Reds can go through 5 bad years and then some good years. Parity is what connects the American sports leagues. Parity. In Major League Soccer, we'll dive into this a little bit more about expansion. has leaned into the fact that they are an American sports league. They are not a soccer league. There's no promotion relegation. They aren't trying to copy the models in Europe and Mexico. They're done with that. That's not what they're aiming for. They are aiming to be an American sports league. And what are American sports leagues? They're large, so 30 to 32 teams. We see that in MLB, NHL, NBA, NFL. And they're going to hit 30 teams after they add Austin, Charlotte, Sacramento, and St. Louis. Right now they're at 26. A lot of cities, a lot of teams. I hear a lot of soccer purists going, it's too many teams. It's the biggest soccer league in the world. It's too many teams. No, it's not. Because each of these cities gets an opportunity to have a team. And it's not too many teams if you keep the parity. And that's what the MLS has done. There's salary rules. You can only have 3 designated players above a certain salary threshold. Now that might expand when the money gets a little bit bigger to maybe 4 designated players for each team. Maybe you can do moves like that to free it up. But it forces your teams to change rosters. It forces you to make tough decisions on players, who to move on from. It emphasizes development of youth. There's more expansion teams this year. Parity. They have money. They're getting players. You get expansion drafts. Money is being spent all over the place. Why? Because the league is a single entity and everybody shares in the profits, which is similar to the model of the other American sports leagues. And what everybody that covers the MLS needs to realize is that this is positive. Because to get a successful soccer league in the United States, it doesn't need to be a well-run soccer league. It needs to be well-run and an American sports league. It needs to be an American sports league. That means parity. That means all different cities are involved. It gets very regionalized, like baseball and basketball. Very star-centered and star-oriented. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, David Beckham, now Carlos Vela in Los Angeles. It's an American sports league, Major League Soccer. This is also a super interesting experiment in sports because for the first time in our lives, for those of you under the age of 30, we are seeing mass expansion at a rapid rate in a sports league. Like the ABA adding 4 teams to the NBA. Like when the NFL was expanding rapidly. But it's truly unique because even if you were around for those expansions, it didn't happen like this. And it didn't happen this fast. That makes Major League Soccer unbelievably difficult to predict. Why? Because rosters are changing insanely fast. The quality of players is ticking up all around the league every single year. Quality goes up and up and up and up. Money being spent goes up and up and up and up. The value of players goes up and up. Stadiums, TV deals. It all is all going up and going up very quickly. You add in a bunch of expansion teams over a few years, like NYCFC, Portland, FC Cincinnati. These are all expansion teams. Now you get Nashville and Inter Miami. LAFC is an expansion team. Right? Those 10 core teams, they aren't the center of the league anymore. Seattle was an expansion team. And they've all expanded into this league over the past 10, 15 years. So when there's that many expansion teams, you're going to have rosters flip and change. Expectations are different. Management styles are different. Some people are taking this approach and that approach. It's the most unique development of a sports league I've ever had a chance to witness. And what it is setting up for the Major League Soccer over this year and the next few years, once expansion's finished, it's going to take about 2-3 years for it to settle down after expansion's finished. Absolute chaos in a lot of the standings. Now, there are some teams that are pulling away as the clear dominant organizations in the league. Seattle, Atlanta, LAFC. And that's because of the money that's pouring in. But money is being spent in bigger markets to make up ground because you can make up ground in this league. Because there are rules on buying players. Because there are rules on salary. That's why Chicago had a new owner come in, buy it all up, and now is throwing money everywhere. Throwing money at the youth academy, throwing money in rebranding, throwing money at getting back into Soldier Field, throwing money at players, throwing money at managers. Why? Because it can work. What billionaire is going to go over to the Premier League and buy up a team that's missed the playoffs or missed Champions League for over 20 years, is a mid-tier team, and pour money into it because you can't match that type of money that's at the top of the league. And this will help MLS grow as a unit, as a league, which is their entire goal. Their entire goal is to be a successful American sports league, not copy the Premier League, not copy La Liga, not copy Bundesliga, because that works there. This works here. And I imagine they're going to get to 30, possibly 32 teams, split it into divisions like Major League Baseball, like the NFL, so it's more regionalized. So where FC Cincinnati and Columbus Crew are competing a little more often, and they're fighting for a division title to get into the playoffs. They are emphasizing win and go home playoffs. They dumped aggregate. Why? No other sport in this country does aggregate. It's either a series or a one-off. You can't do a series in soccer, so you make it a one-off. You make the one seed super important because it's a bye. That's a very American thing. You emphasize the playoffs. You unbalance the schedule so nobody cares or can pretend to care about the supporter shield. And it's just about making the playoffs, winning when you get there. It's an American sports league. And that's what will make this league popular in this country. That's what's made the NFL, the NBA, more popular than a lot of other leagues in the world. Soccer's more popular. How come the NFL beats the Premier League? Nobody watches football in Germany except the Super Bowl, right? Nobody watches football in Spain and the Netherlands and all these other countries, Brazil and Argentina. Everybody watches soccer. And yet the NFL is more popular. Why? Because the American Sports League model, if it hits, which the MLS doesn't even necessarily need to hit, but needs to hit for the MLS, it is an excellent model of a way to run a sports league. I like what Major League Soccer is doing. We'll talk even more about this when we talk about Major League Soccer expansion a little later in the show. But on the other side of the break, I want to talk about the MLS. Where does it rank among sports leagues and soccer leagues around the world? I mean, most people think it's here. It's actually a little higher than you think. We'll dive into the details other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Welcome into the show. A lot of fun so far. I love Major League Soccer. I love talking about it. It's honestly the league that I've paid attention to the most over the years, outside of, maybe individual teams in each of the major leagues. Because it's here. I get to go to games. I get to be around it. I'm familiar with some players. More Americans play, although that's happening less and less. And I've always been a defender of the MLS. And there's a lot of people that are soccer fans, probably some listeners of this show, who insist that it is a horrific league. It's horrible. MLS sucks. Why would you ever watch that? It's better quality soccer in the Premier League and the Bundesliga. And yeah, they are better teams, no doubt about it. And Europe is still the premier talent development, premier talent showcase for world soccer. No doubt about it. I won't argue that. But what makes a great league? Depth, rabidness of fans. Because college football is not the highest level football in the country. Yet it's more popular than other sports leagues, right? It's more popular than the NBA. It's more popular than Major League Baseball. But those are the highest level. But college football is more popular than those. Why? Because it's about the league. It's about the energy. It's about the fans. It's about the culture. It's about the passion. So much more goes into sports than the level of play. The level of play is one thing, right? So the G League, here's a better example within sports. The G League, the minor league of the NBA, is higher level, if you believe it or not, than college basketball. Well, why on earth is the G League not more popular? It's higher level, right? Well, nobody goes to the games. At some places have solid attendance. But generally, nobody goes to the games. There's no culture. There's no history. There's no cool logos. There's no championship that everybody's seeking. It doesn't have this thing. It doesn't have the league. It doesn't have a brand. It doesn't have storylines. Major League Soccer, forget about the talent. The fact that it's in the United States, in major cities, with American sports culture feeding into it, some really rabid fan bases in Portland and Seattle and Atlanta. Now LAFC is a really great fan base. I expect Miami and Nashville will be bumping. FC Cincinnati, third in the league in attendance last year, despite being the worst team in Major League Soccer history, still able to get 27,000 a game into Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati. They are not even in a new stadium yet. That's a good sports league. I've got some numbers here. We'll dive into these numbers, and then we'll talk about the MLS expansion and if it's a good idea and if it'll continue to work. But Major League Soccer is the 7th-ranked soccer league in the world for average attendance. So the average amount of people in the seats per game, it's 7th in the world. So you have Liga MX in Mexico is slightly ahead, and then you have the 5 major leagues, Ligue 1, Serie A, Bundesliga, Premier League, and I'm forgetting one. It's slip of the mind. But anyway, you get the picture. The major 5 and Liga MX, slightly above. However, Major League Soccer has done something really smart. And it's something that I've been emphasizing that they need to do. And that is smaller stadiums. Fill the crowd. Gets people back, makes a better television product. Why? Because if you're closer to people, you get a little louder, you're more excited, it feels more full, it feels more like an atmosphere. I've been to NFL games with 20,000 people, 30, 40,000 people, feels like nobody's there, there's no energy, and it's just kind of a casual viewing. Yeah, you've got 30,000, that's great, but it's a 60,000 seat stadium, so it's half full. That's not the same environment. In fact, it's a much worse environment than I was at a Chesterton game in Northwest Indiana near Chicago. They were playing Valparaiso, and there were 1,000, 2,000 people in the gym, but the gym seated that many. It was full, it was loud, it was energetic, and it was a lot of fun. Makes for a better and more exciting product, right? Because the fans, their loudness and their energy, the atmosphere, it fuels the players, which fuels the excitement of the game, which it doesn't matter they're high school players. It was still extremely exciting. So what Major League Soccer has been able to do is lower the capacity for their stadiums. So if you account for that and you go in terms of percentage of capacity, for stadiums, where does Major League Soccer rank? It's at 95%, which is really good. Second among all sports leagues in the world. It's above the NFL. Well, third, actually. The NFL just a tick ahead of it. Premier League's number 1. They're at 99%. They fill stadiums constantly. They love it. They love it in the Premier League. But the MLS is second out of all soccer leagues. Third out of all sports leagues in the world in terms of filling their stadiums. And there are some teams in this league who could barely get people in the seat. Chicago Fire, right? They averaged just horrendous attendance a year ago. Should be better now that they're moving to Soldier Field downtown. They have those examples, and yet they're still able to get to 95%. That's an accomplishment for Major League Soccer. Okay, but what about those of you that say quality, right? Quality. Well, the middle tier of the league, It's definitely championship in terms of England level, down to maybe the third tier of England is where some of the bottom teams in the MLS will fall, just for comparison's sake. And then all those teams you could fit into the second league in Germany, the second league in Italy, the second league in Spain. That's about the level of Major League Soccer. It's essentially a second league, which is better than it once was. That is certainly true. There was a point where Major League Soccer teams wouldn't be able to compete in most of the second leagues around the world. Now, if you just took a Major League Soccer team out of the middle of the table, toss it into the second league in England, they'd be able to compete for something, right? They'd be in the mix. And 538 Soccer Power Index does a great job of comparing teams from all around the world, because it's a difficult thing to do. They've done a great job of comparing those teams, and they agree with that assessment. Now, the top of Major League Soccer, which will continue to get better, Atlanta, LAFC, Seattle, these teams will continue to pour money in. Inter Miami, I think, could end up being one of those teams where they're going to have high attendance, a lot of excitement, a lot of money. They will become competitive worldwide in the sense that the way LAFC is. LAFC, in terms of Soccer Power Index, by 538, 57.7 is their ranking. That's the 133rd ranked team in the world. That doesn't sound too impressive. So where does that stand? Well, they would not get relegated in the Bundesliga. So if they were in the Bundesliga, mind you, if they got tossed in the Bundesliga and LAFC did not have these roster restrictions that the MLS has to make a better league, they would be able to spend the amount of money and they would obviously become more competitive. But as their team is right now, they wouldn't get relegated in the Bundesliga. They would not. They'd actually be a mid-table team in France. A mid-table team, which in France, mid-table teams pull upsets on the top of the table. They'd be mid-tier in Italy as well, 14th in Serie A. They would be dead last in the Premier League, and they would be fighting for promotion in the championship. LAFC would be, and they'd be dead last in La Liga. But that sounds like a competitive soccer club. They could beat Newcastle United, 4 out of 10 times. LAFC could, certainly. They could beat a lot of the teams in the Bundesliga 5 out of 10 times. They could pull upsets of that level if they were in those leagues. Certainly. That's the level that Major League Soccer is. That's the top tier team. Doesn't sound too horrible to me. Sounds like that those with untrained eyes wouldn't really be able to tell the difference. And most people in the United States have untrained eyes in terms of soccer. What's that mean? Well, the quality is not so far behind that it should keep you away from it, especially because it's in the United States. The quality is there. Certainly there. Now, what about expansion? They've continued to expand. Austin, Charlotte, Sacramento, St. Louis, the next 4 expansion teams planned for Major League Soccer. Is this a good idea? Yes, 100%. And I mentioned the reasons a little earlier in the show. Everybody's comparing this to other soccer leagues. It's not. It's an American sports league. Forget that idea. They want to be competitive here. They want to beat Major League Baseball, right? They want to beat the NBA. Soccer's compelling enough. It's a quick, short TV product. And if you just understand the game a little bit, it can be really exciting. That's why it's the number 1 sport in the world. That's why so many people are attracted to it. That'll happen in the United States. The Latino population is booming here in the U.S., meaning soccer will become more and more popular. And if you can mix in large populations interested in soccer, younger generations interested in soccer, with an American sports league model that attracts fans who aren't necessarily soccer fans. Because think about it. Major League Baseball. How many people don't like baseball, love the American sports league model so much that if their team from their city is in the playoffs, they're watching? A lot. Same in the NBA. I don't really, I'm from Charlotte. I really don't understand basketball. But then the Hornets are in the playoffs. Oh, boy, I got to get to a TV. Same thing in the NFL. Some people don't know what a first down is, yet they cannot wait to watch their beloved Dallas Cowboys in the divisional round. That model works in the United States. And it's a big country. And if you can get fans go to a game who don't really understand soccer, but you know what? It's easy enough to follow. A goal goes in the net. Oh, it's cheer. Yeah. Woo. If you get those fans interested enough in their local team, and their local team is competitive enough, regular enough, that they tune in on TV or buy tickets to a playoff game just to be in the atmosphere, just to support their city, that's what makes professional sports leagues in the United States work. Because the more people care, the more intense fans you'll have as well. And intense fans are what drive sports talk, are what drive podcasts, which then drive the promotion of the sport, which the promotion of the sport drives TV deals, and it all just kind of builds on itself. That's what they're going for. And Major League Soccer is going to nail it. I'm full in favor. I used to not be. I used to almost consider promotion and relegation. We should run like all the other soccer leagues in the world, and forget that. You'll never be the Premier League. But you can beat Major League Baseball. The average demographic watching baseball, far older than Major League Soccer. Younger people care more about soccer than baseball nowadays. At least it seems that way. And with the growing Latino population, that prediction that Major League Soccer is more popular than Major League Baseball in 10 years, it's not that outlandish. This is the 25th season of Major League Soccer. Let's rewind to the 25th season of the NFL. The Cleveland Browns were winning championships, people. That was a long time ago. The NFL's had a long, long time to grow and develop. Same with the NBA. 25 years in the NBA. What was it, Bill Russell against 6 other teams winning for the Celtics? 25 years into Major League Baseball. That was like 1907, before the Cubs' first World Series in 08. Those sports leagues have had hundreds of years to grow in the United States. Hundreds of years of grandfathers passing their love to their sons, who pass to their sons, who pass to their kids, who grow a culture. Think about what's happening in Seattle. How many people started going to Seattle games when they were 35? They're about 42 now. Their kid is growing up, becoming a huge Seattle fan. He gets his friends into it. This is how sports grow. And it's exactly what's happening in Major League Soccer. They should stick to the model. They should nail this model. I love this model. Lean into it. You're an American sports league. You're not a soccer league. And that's exactly how they're doing it. I'm in full support. I think that they are seeing something that the entire media is missing, especially the soccer media. Why? Because the soccer media has been into the Premier League, has been into La Liga. But if you take a step back and you look at this thing as a whole, as an American sports league, it can work. And I'm excited that more cities are getting involved. It's a bigger country, too. You can't have 30 teams in Spain. Why? There's not 30 viable cities in Spain. While there's 40, 50 viable sports cities here in the United States. Certainly 30. Certainly 30. Think about all the big cities that don't have a team right now. They're adding one in Austin. San Diego could use a team. There ain't no sports really going on other than Padres baseball in San Diego right now. I love the model. We will predict the MLS on the other side of the break. I will give you predictions for all 26 teams. We'll rank each conference. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, final 20 minutes of the show. Well, 10 to 20. I'm going to go through Eastern Conference, Western Conference in Major League Soccer. Plus, we'll look at the schedule for Week 1 here. And MLS will start to not become the center of this show, but a very large part of this show, especially because it's going to be a lot of the soccer that's on in the summer. And better to talk about that than some of the transfer stuffs. And we got listeners all across this country. And it's very important that we try to hammer home that this league, Major League Soccer, becomes popular. Because I think it's a great league. I think it's a league that we all can get excited about. in the United States. There's teams that you can cheer for within your own backyard. It's growing. I think it's a beautiful product, and we'll talk about that all summer long. Okay, predictions. Eastern Conference, Western Conference. We'll start with the East. We'll go from bottom to top. Now, there's a lot of teams. Okay, I'm gonna try to talk about each team for about 30 seconds to a minute. We'll try to run through this whole thing. We will start with the Eastern Conference. We'll go bottom up. Before we do that, though, I'm going to talk about the 2019 standings. So there were 24 teams in the MLS in 2019. There's 26 now with Nashville and Miami jumping into the league. Let's talk about the 2019 standings. Okay, Seattle won the MLS Cup in the playoffs in the first year of the new playoff format. That is 7 teams from each conference make the playoffs. So last year was 7 out of 12. This year, 7 out of 13, and then it'll be 7 out of 14, and then 7 out of 15. And that's really smart. 7's a great number. I hope they stay there for a long time. It's single elimination. You get home games if you're the higher seed, home games all the way through, even to the championship. I really love that model for Major League Soccer because it really makes it an event. Each game is super important. And just because you're the best team all year, as LAFC was last year, they were the record point scorers in Major League Soccer history. They couldn't get it done. But Seattle wins over Toronto at the end of it all. But here are the standings last year. NYCFC, this is in order, top to bottom, Eastern Conference. NYCFC, Atlanta United, Philadelphia Union came in third. Toronto FC, DC United, New York Red Bulls, and New England Revolution snuck into the back end of the playoffs. Chicago Fire finished in 8th. Montreal, Columbus, Orlando City, and then FC Cincinnati with a league worst point total in league history at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. In the West in 2019, LAFC finished in first with 72 points, a whopping 72 points. Seattle Sounders in second, Real Salt Lake in third, Minnesota United in fourth, LA Galaxy in fifth, Portland in sixth, Dallas in seventh, San Jose in eighth, Colorado in ninth, Houston Dynamo in 10th, Sporting Kansas City in 11th, and the Vancouver Whitecaps in 12th place. Okay. That's the history. That's the setup for 2019. In case you didn't know it, let's dive into the Eastern Conference, who I think is going to be the 13th ranked team this year, the Montreal Impact. Not a lot of talent. Thierry Henry brought in, hasn't had success as a manager. He makes sense for Montreal. Can he keep his calm? Can he keep his composure with no talent? Hopefully so, and I think that they could maybe build something in the future, but they relied a lot on Nacho Piatti. He's out the door. Montreal, to me, worst team in the East this year. This is a little surprise of a pick, but 12, the New York Red Bulls. Listen, in the MLS right now, you can't stand still. You can't stay pat. Everybody spent money. Everybody got better, it feels like. At least 2/3 of the league did. New York Red Bulls did not. They're relying on Kaku. I've heard it's a transition year for the New York Red Bulls. I think they'll be one of the worst teams in the East in a really competitive MLS. Listen, things like this are going to happen where a team like the Red Bulls that has been consistently near the top loses a lot of talent and they just hemorrhage losses after losses to teams like the team I have finishing above them who've gotten better, FC Cincinnati. I would put them higher on this list had they not just fired their head coach for using the N-word in the locker room, which was a big no-no for Ron Jans. He's out the door for FC Cincinnati. They're back to Yohan DeMay, who was the interim head coach after they fired, to me prematurely, Alan Koch a year ago. FC Cincinnati was a complete mess. They couldn't score any goals, and because they couldn't possess or score any goals, they got a lot back down their throat and gave up a lot of goals. The midfield's gotten better. The frontline attack could be one of the better ones in the league with Yu Jacobo, Jurgen Locadia, Regatan on the right side. Then you have Mendon distributing from center defensive mid. I think FC Cincinnati can be competitive, but no coach right now other than Yohan DeMay. I don't really have confidence in him, and I don't think there's anybody they can find, so I think it'll be a little chaotic in Cincinnati. They finish in 11th. 10th, I have Orlando City. They're relying on former Man United star Nani. It just feels like Orlando City did not do enough to push forward. They have Oscar Pereira as their head coach. We'll see what he can do, but I just don't see it from Orlando City. I have them finishing in 10th. A lot of upside, though, in the 9th-ranked team in my standings, the Chicago Fire. Why is there a lot of upside? because they're going to spend money and they're going to really try to make the playoffs and really try to be relevant at Soldier Field this year and try to capture the attention of Chicago while they have their attention by moving to Soldier Field. If they can be good, if they can be exciting, if they can bring in big names, I know they lose Bastian Schweinsteiger and Dax McCarty. It feels like they got worse, but they're going to buy some players. They added some DPs. I think Chicago Fire could be pretty competitive, but I sit them at 9th with a lot of potential to move higher up. Philadelphia Union was a real surprise last year, finishing 3rd in the East. I have them finishing 8th, just outside the playoffs this year. They're relying on a lot of young players and being a well-coached team and everything going right. It felt like everything went right for them last year. When you're relying on young players, everything went right for you a year ago. I think the conference got better. Philadelphia Union, one of those teams that could certainly make the playoffs, but to me, they'll finish on just the outside of it, finishing 8th in the Eastern Conference. DC United, the reason I put them at 7th above Philadelphia, I think these two teams are really close. Bill Hamid in goal. The United States international keeper potentially for this next cycle, Bill Hamid. When you have him and a solid team and a long-term manager that's gotten a lot done for DC United, to me, even though they lost Wayne Rooney, they are going to be competitive, and they'll be the 7th best team making the playoffs just barely in the Eastern Conference. Toronto FC, I put them at 6 because I think they'll deal with injuries. They already are. Michael Bradley already injured. Josie Altidore never really plays a full season. I think they're a team that's going to hang around, get some wins, deal with injuries, go through rough stretches, and still be a threat in the playoffs as they have been. They won this Eastern Conference a year ago with a beautiful playoff run. In 5th, to me, the Columbus Crew. A lot of great offseason buys. They added Liga MX number 10 in Zelarayan, and he is excellent. And Columbus Crew has just added a lot of great pieces. They added a left back. They added a center attacking mid. Caleb Porter is a manager I like. He won an MLS Cup with Portland, and they got better as the season went along last year. I think they'll be one of the surprises. I don't have them as high as some people do. I have them at 5th. They have a high ceiling, though. They could definitely win the Eastern Conference. New England Revolution, to me, finished at 4th. Bruce Arena makes the playoffs. They had a midseason boost when he came in. I didn't like what Bruce Arena did with the United States men's national team, how he didn't take blame for what happened there. But he is 12 for 12 in full seasons at making the playoffs in Major League Soccer. And I think New England has a lot of talent, and I think they'll finish at 4th. Plus, every simulation I've ran of this upcoming MLS season while playing some career modes in FIFA, for some reason, New England ends up winning it. I'm not going to ignore that type of advice from FIFA. I have them at 4th. NYCFC finishes at 3rd in this Eastern Conference to me. No frontline stars, but Maxi Morales is excellent. There isn't a Carlos Vela. There isn't a Joseph or Pity Martinez. So there isn't that frontline star to push them over the top. But I think 3rd is a decent finish. Plus, they're having some weird things going on with Yankee Stadium early in the year, and we saw how that affected Portland last year early in the season with some problems with their home grounds. I think that'll have NYCFC lose some ground. We'll see if that new manager can push them over the top in the playoffs. 2nd for me in the Eastern Conference is the surprise team. It's the expansion side, Inter Miami. They are throwing money at this, and they've got a lot of great players. It's one of the deeper rosters in the league. You have Pizarro for some frontline talent. Will Trapp's on this team. They're experienced in the right spots for MLS. They're highly talented in the right spots for MLS, and they will buy again. They are going to get a world-class star this summer. I think they'll have a back end of the season boost from it, and I just think that they will be a very successful expansion team again. It feels like Inter Miami is that expansion team like Atlanta United was, while Nashville in the West feels like an FC Cincinnati or a Minnesota United type expansion team where they're carrying over guys from some USL, and they'll have really exciting home atmospheres, but they won't be a frontline team. I really like Inter Miami. Plus, this league's so unpredictable that I couldn't go chalk, so I figured I needed to put a surprise team in there, and why not David Beckham's Inter Miami finishing at 2nd. To me, the best team in the Eastern Conference this year, I didn't mess around with this, it's Atlanta United. 70,000 people going to those games. Best goal scorer in the league, and Joseph Martinez. Pity Martinez doing excellent as well, distributing to him. They have the most talent in the East, and to me, I think they will be the best team in the East. Western Conference coming up on the other side of the break. I just talked really fast. Need to take a quick drink of water. But Western Conference coming your way on the other side of the break. You're listening to the GSMC Soccer Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Boy, running through that Eastern Conference as quick as I did nearly took my voice away. So we'll try to avoid that here with the Western Conference. Follow us on Twitter, though, at GSMC_soccer. Like us on Facebook, GSMC Soccer. Just did the Eastern Conference. Atlanta, to me, the best team. Who's going to win the conference in terms of the playoffs? That's an even harder choice. I'll just go with the 1 seed, Atlanta United. But the way the playoffs would shake out, in my eyes, is Miami hosts D.C., New York City FC hosts Toronto, New England hosts Columbus. Toronto could definitely win a one-off matchup, and they've done really well in the playoffs. And I think Toronto could be just as talented as NYCFC, but they're a little more injury-prone. Let's go ahead and move to the Western Conference. A few minutes left in the show. And I'm going to start from the bottom up. Nashville, to me, 13th worst team, last place team in the Western Conference. I think they're more of a expansion team like Cincy. I'm hearing a lot of the same things I heard about Cincy. Everybody was like, I don't think they'll be the worst team in the league. They have a decent back line. I'm not sure who's going to score goals. FC Cincinnati was relying on Fernando Adi. Nashville's got Walker Zimmerman. Nashville has some decent pieces, and they'll have a fun fan base, but I'm hearing who's going to score. We don't really know who's going to score. Not a good sign, especially in a league this competitive. They're walking into an even more competitive league than FC Cincinnati did. And I think they'll struggle a little bit. I don't think they'll be as bad as Cincinnati was, but I don't see a team in the Western Conference being worse than them this year, although expansion team's really hard to predict. So 13th to me, Nashville. 12th, Vancouver. They've got a really good keeper. It'll keep them competitive, but it just won't matter. Just not enough frontline players, and the people from Vancouver are acting like there's a lot of hope. I'm not sure there is. The Houston Dynamo, they can score goals in bunches. They added Quintero from Liga MX. He pairs well with Albert Ellis. They lose Kyoto, who was kind of the same player. And when that front line clicked at the top of the 4-3-3 for Houston, they looked awfully powerful and could score goals in bunches. I think that'll happen again this year. They'll score a lot, but just not enough, not consistently enough. But we'll see if Quintero pairs better with Ellis, and Houston Dynamo can be a little more competitive. Real Salt Lake, to me, they're 10th place. They're developing some USL players. I just don't like the look of their roster. To me, this is a new competitive MLS. You have to be top line in the MLS. You have to be buying players. You have to be going out and making big deals. And we just didn't see that from Real Salt Lake. I don't see them being too good this year. I see them finishing in 10th. San Jose, the Earthquakes, good team, but they're relying again on Chris over the post, Wondolowski. I just don't see him being the same level of striker. I think he continues to fall because of his age and because of the increasing attacking talent in the MLS. I think San Jose finishes 9th. Sporting Kansas City just outside the playoffs in 8th. This is tough. I really like Sporting KC. They spent some money. They are a really competitive organization, have always been a team that's in the playoffs. They have spent money in the right spots to try to ensure they make it again. I could certainly see them making it, but I have them at 8th. 7th, to me, the Colorado Rapids. They look so fun at the end of last year. They were flying around the pitch, scoring on set pieces, had a lot of energy. They invested some into the roster. They feel like a team that's really on the front foot and moving forward. I like Colorado as 7th as that last playoff team, although missing Tim Howard, we'll see how that affects them. Portland Timbers in 6th. Diego Valeri took a lower contract, allowed them to add more depth. They've always been a really competitive team. Great home field advantage for the Portland Timbers. They're a team that feels like they're playoff bound this year and finishes in 6th. FC Dallas, they finished in 7th. They've got a lot of young talent getting better. They could be a team that's a dark horse to win the entire MLS Cup because if everything clicks for FC Dallas, they can be really dangerous. I have them in finishing in 5th. Minnesota United, goals for Minnesota United. A lot of goal-scoring talent. They were good at scoring goals in their first year, their first expansion year, but just gave up way too many. Some of the worst defense I've ever seen, especially early in that campaign from Minnesota United. Literally ever seen, high school, college, you name it. There were some really horrible moments from Minnesota United early in their first MLS campaign. They've cleaned that up. They've gotten better. They continue to add talent, and they've got a lot of goal scorers and a really good program going on in Minnesota United. I have them finishing at 4th. I think LA Galaxy gets better from last year. They add Chicharito. I think he fits into a system better than Zlatan does. Plus, they had a lot of young players that they're waiting to get better. I really like LA Galaxy this year. Super talented team. I have them finishing 3rd. The Seattle Sounders, they're focusing a lot on the CONCACAF Champions League. No MLS team has ever won that. They're the defending champs, though. Jordan Morris, super talented. When they had their front 3 attacking players all in the lineup last year, 15-1-2 was the record. Truly excellent from the Seattle Sounders. They are a great team, and they will be competitive throughout the season. They'll go through some laws as they try to balance out their schedule, balance out the roster. It's not just about MLS for Seattle, but they will certainly be hitting their stride, heading into the postseason as they have 3 out of the last 4 years, and could be a team that wins the West again. The team, however, I think is going to win the title, and it's an obvious pick, but it's LAFC. They added depth to the striker position, which hurt them late last year. They were the best team in MLS a year ago. Let's not be silly. This is a super squad, super logo, super ownership group, super stadium, super everything. They are thrilling to watch, and they will be the best team in Major League Soccer this year. They will most likely have the leading goal scorer again and possibly back-to-back MVP, Carlos Vela. They've got depth to the striker position. They are awesome. And they're always willing to make moves midseason if there needs to be some adjustments for LAFC. So there you go, East and West. I have LAFC and Atlanta United as the 2 best teams. Not exactly groundbreaking predictions, but the talent for those 2 teams is just a little too overwhelming to ignore. That is my MLS predictions. Let's talk about the opening matches this weekend just to give you an idea and where these games are being broadcast. DC United, Colorado Rapids. That's at DC on ESPN+. Montreal Impact hosting New England Revolution. That's on ESPN+. Houston Dynamo hosting LA Galaxy. I believe that's on Fox. San Jose Earthquakes hosting Toronto FC. FC Dallas hosting Philadelphia Union. Orlando City hosting Real Salt Lake. Nashville hosting Atlanta United. Vancouver Whitecaps hosting Sporting Kansas City. That's all on Saturday. On Sunday, the New York Red Bulls host FC Cincinnati. I honestly think that FC Cincinnati might be able to come out and win that game. They've got a lot of attacking talent. Yohan DeMeo at least got that team to score some goals last year. We'll see how they handle essentially having no manager at this point. Columbus Crew SC, they'll host New York City FC. That should be a lot of fun for Columbus to try to prove themselves. Seattle Sounders at home against the Chicago Fire. The Fire have a real chance at an upset in that one with Seattle's focus being elsewhere. LAFC hosting Inter Miami. I think LAFC will win this one, but Inter could make a big statement with a win on ESPN. And then Portland in the Fox primetime game on Sunday night hosting Minnesota United. That one should be tons of fun. That's at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, 7:30 for those of you on the East Coast. Loud crowd in Portland, always rowdy, always a huge deal when the Portland Timbers are at home. And Minnesota United scores a lot of goals. So a lot of great matchups. It's a league where a lot of teams feel like they have hope. I'm from Cincinnati, and living here in Chicago, and FC Cincinnati, Chicago Fire are 2 teams that feel like they have hope. And they might end up being the 2 worst teams in the East. That's a good league, everybody. That's what you want in a sports league. When potentially the 2 worst teams in a conference feel like that there's a path to the postseason and a path to relevance in the MLS. It's not that way in the Premier League. It's not that way in La Liga. It's that way in the MLS, which is a dominant American sports league. We'll go ahead and step aside. That's the show. I thank you so much for listening to this MLS preview. We dove into the Champions League. Was a ton of fun. Like us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Flip those around because it's follow on Twitter and like on Facebook. GSMC Soccer, both places. There's an underscore on Twitter. This podcast has been brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lukas Moore. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.